Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now the eagle-eyed among you will notice that this is the second video on the channel today. As always, where we do a crossword video, which Mark did earlier on, we do try and do a puzzle video as well. That's because the groups of people who enjoy the crosswords tend to not be the same group of people who enjoy the Sudoku, and we do want to keep you all happy. So we're going to have a look at this Sudoku in a moment, and it's by Christoph Seeliger, the brilliant German puzzle constructor. We've done a few of Christoph's puzzles on the channel, and they've always been really well received, and that's principally because he is a genius puzzle setter. And yeah, this I hope will be a good example. It appeared on a Facebook group I'm a member of, and Christoph said it's a leftover from the recent World Sudoku Championship. Now, leftover makes it sound like it's not a very, it didn't make the grade. I suspect the reason it wasn't used is it might have been a bit difficult. You have to be very careful with more difficult puzzles in championship environments because, if you do include anything that's really complicated, it can throw out the times massively. So we're going to take a look at this in a second. Obviously there's a bit of adornment in the grid that I'll talk about in a sec. I just want to say thank you though to those of you who've become patrons of the channel over the last few days. We had a really good response to my video announcing the November Patreon reward puzzle. So each month Mark and I put some extra content on Patreon, and some of you are generous enough to sponsor us there, and it's much appreciated. So big thank you to all of you who do that. It's $2 a month for the extra content, the extra puzzle. $3 a month gets you a video of how to solve the extra puzzle as well, which I still need to do, I know, and it's coming, don't worry. Now, this puzzle, what do these circles and lines mean? Well, this is called a between Sudoku. So where we have circles like these two connected by a grey line, let's fill in some example numbers. If I put an 8 there and a 4 there, now what this means is that this number here, which is on the grey line connecting the circles, this has to lie between the number 4 and the number 8. So it cannot be a 4 or an 8, and it must be a 5, 6 or a 7. And you can see that some of these circles are connected by quite long grey lines, so they're going to be more restricted because we're going to have to fit in more numbers between. So if this was a 2 and that was a 6, for example, these squares here would have to be 3, 4 and 5 in some order. They can obviously repeat if they're not in the same box. So if that was a 4, it'd be perfectly permissible for that to be a 4 as well. And using only that restriction, we ought to be able to finish the puzzle. Now, if you want to have a go, either before or after watching me, click on the link under the video, and that'll take you to our webpage where you should be able to play along on whatever device is your preference. Now, I think what I'm going to do is a bit like with the Robin Hood Sudoku that I did on Saturday. I am going to look at these external cells early on because there's clearly a relationship between these cells. And in fact, 9, this 9 in the center obviously sees all 4 of those cells. And these ones on the edge also see all 4 of the cells, and those 5 see all of the cells. So actually these cells are a little bit restricted. Let's just have a look at what the options are. That's got to be 2, 3, 6 and 7 into those two. 2, 4, 7 and 8 into those two. 8 there rules out an 8 into that square. 7 down there rules out 7 into those two positions. I don't think either of these squares can be a 4. That's just my yeah, they can't be a 4, look, because if we do try and put 4 in either of them, the furthest away I could put this cell would be a 6. Let's make that a 6. And that means I've got to put 5 into all 5 of those squares, because 5 is the only digit lying between a 4 and a 6. So that's obviously impossible. So we can delete 4 from those squares. So these two are getting quite limited now. Ah, yeah, okay. Now this is lovely. So let's look at this square now. Can this square ever be... In fact... Oh, yeah, this is very, very nice. This can never be a 6 or a 7. Let's look at 7 first. If this is a 7, what does that do? Well, obviously, we need to create some space, so we can't make this a 7 as well, or there are absolutely no digits that lie between 7 and 7, so that we'd have to make this a 2. But the moment we make this a 2, it has an impact on this square. It forces this square to be an 8. I can't make both of these squares equal 2, and I need to. Because if this one's an 8, then there's only, well, there are no digits lying between 7 and 8 that we can put on into the yellow squares. So that's why this can't be a 7. For a similar reason, it can't be a 6, because, again, what I want to do there is make both of these cells 2, and I can't. I can make one of them 2, but then the other one will be a 7 or an 8, and that's too close to the 6. So that is not 6 or 7. By symmetry, that's not 6. So this is 2. So these two now must be the 6 and the 7. And neither of these squares can now be a 2. Because, well, it's obvious. One of these squares will be a 2 and will connect to another 2. So that's no use. So that's a 7. That's an 8. These two squares must be 2 and 4. And what now? This is very, very clever. Very clever. We need to look at this square. And let's have a think about this square, and in particular whether this square can ever be a 3. And it can't be, because of this square. This 7 is beautiful. Let's look at this. If this is a 3, what happens? You can see there's enough room between the 7 and the 3 for these 5 squares. These squares have to be 4, 5 and 6 in some order. Let's put that in just to show you. But look at the effect this 7 has now on this difference. Effectively, this 7 sees every square on this grey line. So this square might have an 8 in it, but it might as well have had a 7 in it, because now we have to find numbers between 3 and 7 to put along this grey line, i.e. 4, 5 and 6 again. Now look what's happened. In column 1 we have 4 different squares that need to take only 3 different values. So this is never going to work. We will always have to repeat at least one of these numbers, and that will break the puzzle. So rather, I mean, it's just gorgeous. That is absolutely gorgeous. So this is not 2, therefore that one is the 3. And you can see this one has enough degrees of freedom because the 8 doesn't interfere with this, the 3 and the 7 differential here. And in fact, what's going to happen, we are now going to get quadruple here, aren't we? But it's going to be a quadruple that we can live with because it's going to have just enough. Yeah, let's put this in. So between the 2 and the 7, we've got to have 3, 4, 5 and 6. And between this 2 and 8, we've also got to have 3, 4, 5 and 6 because we can't have 7. So 3, 4, 5 and 6. So now we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 quadruple. Now actually, look, we've got 4 and a 5 here. So these two can't be 4 and 5. Therefore, these two can't be 3 and 6. we can do a bit more tidying up here. I'm going to release that one. Can't be 6. Look, this one can't be 3 or 5, and these two squares must be 8 and 9 to complete the column, given that we know the value of those 5 cells there. Now, what next? Well, look, we've got 1s there. That's got to be a 1. Because neither of these two squares can be a 1. That means there's a 1 in one of these two positions. Ah, now of course, yeah, because look, this 3 and 7 now is also, it's quite restricted, so these squares can only be 4, 5 and 6 as well. So we're going to get another quadruple across the top. These squares now, look, can only be 3, 4, 5 and 6. Sorry, not, well, they can only be 3, 4, 5 and 6, but because these can only be 4, 5, 6 around this side, this is the only square in this quadruple that can be a 3. So that must be a 3. There's a 3 in one of those positions. Ah, now this must be a 3 because of these 3s interacting. This square obviously can't be a 3 because that lies between a 3 and an 8. So the 3 down here must be in one of those two squares. This can't be a 5. So, oops, 5. So this is a 4, 6 pair. So this can't be 4 or 6. That square must be a 5. There's a 5 in one of these two positions. Ah, now that's this. Okay, now we should have a look down here because these squares now have got to be 4, 5, 6 and 7. So we've got 2 more quadruples. This 7 sees those 2 squares. So this now becomes a 3, 4, 5, 6 quadruple. How clever is this? That can't be a 3 now. So that's a 3. This one can't be a 3. Ah, now, and this can't be a 3 for the same reason, because this is a... In fact, the only place the 3 can go along this quadruple is in this square. So that is a 3. Therefore, this is a 3. And there must be a 3 in one of these two squares, but I don't think I know which way round that goes. 6, 7. So these two squares must be 2 and 9 to complete this column. These two squares must be 2 and 9 to complete this row. And these two squares must be 2 and 9 to complete this row. So now, what does all of this mean? This box is really restricted. So which numbers are missing? 7 and 9? Oh no, we've got 9. Sorry, 1 and 7. This has got to be a 1. That's got to be a 7. That means there's a 1 in one of these two squares. The 7s, look, mean this is a 7. That gives us a 1, 7 pair in this box. This puzzle is absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you guys ever get this sensation when you're solving a puzzle. It's like you're being... I've said this before, and probably about Christoph puzzle, but I feel like I'm being, you know, led on a journey that's been very cleverly designed. Now... Oh, hang on. Oh, Oh, come on. Yes, look at this. Okay, there are two things I want to say about this. The first is that we have a very clear example of an X-wing here. So if we look at column 1 and column 9, you can see the 9s are locked into two positions, the same two rows of the grid in both cases. So there's no way that, well, let me put it a different way. Imagine this was a 9 in the finished solution. What would that mean for column 9? It would mean there would have to be a 9 here. Now the only other thing that could exist would be that this was the 9 in column 1, but if this is a 9 in column 1, that would have to be the 9 in column 9. So there is no way that any of these squares can ever contain the number 9, because there's always going to be a 9 in either this square or this square, and either this square or this square. Now that means there must be a 9 in one of those two squares, and in this box there must be a 9 in one of those two squares. And the other thing I wanted to say was look at this 2-9 combination here. Now some people, I've got this wrong in the past myself, would look at this and say, ah, this is a deadly pattern. This means the Sudoku is broken because it will have two solutions. Well, because these options are in 4 different 3x3 blocks, it's actually fine. If, let's imagine this square wasn't a 3, it was a 2 or a 9. Let's imagine the 2-9 quadruple was in the 4 yellow squares there. That would be broken, assuming there was nothing about the grey lines that resolved the issue. But here it's absolutely possible for something in one of these 3x3 blocks to influence the value of one of these squares and thereby break the uniqueness problem that would otherwise arise. Now just notice, look, we've got 2-9 pair here. Now in this box I've not put 2 or 9 into anything. There's no 2 or 9 in those squares, so there must be a 2 and a 9 in these two positions. It can't be a 5 there at the bottom. In fact, this must be 4, 6 and 8. So this is a 4 or an 8. That's got to be 4, 6 or 8, but that means that can't be a 4 or a 6. That can't be a 4 or a 6. That's a 5, 7 pair now. Aha, now there's another, look at this 7. I'm being led by the nose by a greater mind. Right, what does the 7 mean? Well, it means there must be an 8 or a 9 in one end of this line. One of these circles must contain an 8 or a 9. Well, let's look at this option here. This square cannot be an 8, this circle cannot be an 8, and it can't be a 9 either. So this means this circle must be an 8 or a 9. Now I've already got a 1 highlighted in that square. Well, that's clearly impossible now. That's not a 1, the 1 must be here. And there's a 9 because of the X-wing in one of these squares. So this must in fact be an 8. And now look, this is gonna unwind the edge of the grid. Watch this. This 8 means that this is a 9. This is an 8. Now that must be a 2. That's a 9, and that's exactly the thing that's unwound the edge, this 2-9 pattern on the edge of the grid. How clever is that? It's just stunning. It really is just stunning. Now, okay, so what do we need now? These two squares must be a 2 and a 9 as well. Let's put those in. These 1s mean there must be a 1 in one of those two positions. So this is so we've got lots of pairs going on here. These two squares must be 5 and 8. And 6, 4, 5, 5, 6, 4, 6, 8. All these pairs in the center. This square is relatively open. I mean, there's a lot of options for that square. I probably don't want to look there, I don't think. Let's try and find somewhere to... twos. These twos. And this square can't be a 2, so that means there is a 2 here. Now, that's lovely. Look at that. So now I know one of these circles must contain a 1. Now this one can't, so this one does, and that unwinds the 1 and the 7. And that's going to open up the whole of this side. And look here as well. Now this 2, this square can't be a 2 anymore, because obviously 2 is not between 1 and 2. It's equal to one side of it. So where can we put a 2 in this 3 by 3? That's the only square. That resolves the 2 and the 9 there. That resolves that this is a 9. That can't be a 6. So what do we need now? We need to put a 7 in here somewhere as well. So 4... this 8 sees that square. That must be a 4. That's a 6. That's a 5. That's a 4. That's a 4. That's a 6. We need 5 and 7 into these squares here. Let's highlight that like that. That must be an 8. This must be a 4. Therefore, that's a 5. There must be a digit I can do up here. What digit is that going to be? 4, 6, and 8. 6, 8. That square must be a 6, look. Therefore, that's a 6, that's a 4, that's an 8. These two squares here have got to be 8 and 9. And I think... yeah, I see. So I think we're done now. What a puzzle. It's just, you know, it is just so clever. That's the only word for it. This 6 resolves this 6 and 7. So we've got the set, and we've just got a whole sequence of pairs. This must be a 7 because of the 5-8 pair here. That means this is a 5, this is a 5, this is a 7, and this is a 7. And everything is going to get resolved by this 1-7 pair that we found as a result of these 3 squares, because this 1 opens up the 1 and the 3. That resolves the 3 and the 6. That resolves the 6 and the 5. That resolves the 5 and the 8. That resolves the 8 and the 9. The 9 and the 2. The 2 and the 4. Now that should be a 4 now. And that should be a 7. Check. Wow. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. That's just another stunning puzzle. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.